is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
All right, welcome into another edition of Three Ma. John Kurtz, Cole Manbeck back with you. We are here with Frank Martin for part 2, and really looking forward to this. If you heard part 1, I can guarantee you're looking forward to this. So get your bottle of Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, pour yourself a nice glass, and get ready to listen to this. You can get some 360 vodka, too, all from our friends at Holiday Distillery, who are great K-State folks who support the pod, so make sure that you support them as well. Well, we were saying on the last one, we feel like we could talk all day with you, telling stories about your days at K-State, Frank, and we're going to do just that here. Look, I've got to ask about, I think, my favorite K-State team in history, the 2009-2010 team that went to the Elite Eight, had the incredible win over Xavier in the NCAA tournament. But even going back to the beginning of the year, I can remember being really fired up at the beginning of that season, looking around like, man, I mean, you put Jacob Pullen and Denny Clemente together, obviously Curtis Kelly coming into the mix too. It felt like something big was brewing, but there wasn't a ton of hype in the offseason about it. It took a little time for people to kind of know about that team. So when did you have an idea that team had the capability to be as special as it was?
I always live in the world that I don't think we're quite good enough. It's just the way I'm wired. So my approach on an everyday basis is like we got to do more because we're not quite good enough. But I remember we scrimmaged Wichita when it was kind of hidden, quiet. Nobody can find out about scrimmages, whatever. And I played everybody, and they beat us. I can't remember. I mean, I'm crazy if I'd remember the score. They beat us like in 85, 82 or something like that. But I don't count that on my resume. So, we're not using that game for an NCAA resume. So I wasn't running plays. We were just playing, and I wasn't trying to win the game. I was trying to figure out my team. And Underwood, Brad, came up to me and he said, "We're really good." I'm like, "Brad, stop." He goes, "We're really good." And because of the way we rebounded and the number of free throws no one fouled out. Their whole team would have fouled out if we were keeping fouls. And I was like, and I'm a big believer, rebounding and free throw attempts are the two things that win you championships. And assuming you got a team that can defend and is halfway normal offensively. But I never really paid attention. And then we played Alabama in Mobile, Alabama. And we absolutely blitzed them. And Jim Herrick was at the game. And Coach Herrick and I are friends. And he pulls me aside after the game and he says, "Frank, you got a Final Four team." I was like, "Coach, stop." And he's like, "With those two guards and the depth that you have at the front line, you got a Final Four team." And I went, we left, get back to Manhattan. So I called Coach the next day, and I was like, "Coach, like, really?" And he's like, "I'm telling you." So I flew Coach out, and he spent 4 or 5 days with us watching practice, talking, and he continued to regurgitate that in my head every day for those 4 or 5 days. And now here we are, man. We're playing Kansas for the Big 12 title in front of, which, by the way, to this day, is the most highly competitive buzzer-to-buzzer game of two high-level teams I've ever been a part of. That Big 12 championship game at the Sprint Center, 19,000 people, whatever. Like the energy in that build. I was in the locker room, and I could feel the energy in the locker room before I walked out there. That was incredible. And then the game was unbelievable. I got a great Brad Underwood story for you later on about that game, but that was the journey as leading into the end of that team, and knowing that we were good.
Well, there were some. I mean, that game that you guys played in Manhattan too that year. I mean, I know it ended in a loss, and in overtime, Sharon Collins had a hell of a play at the end of the game. But I mean that game was nuts, wire to wire, everything that was happening there.
All three of the games. All three games. Yeah. It's those two teams, like neither one, they beat us all 3 times in 3 absolute, like, I guess I don't get in trouble anymore with the Big 12 if I say certain things. The one at home, I remember the guys that didn't play on either team not being very good for us. You know who the three guys I'm talking about are, right?
I know you're. Yeah, yeah. My favorite guys to always talk about is John.
And then we went to their place. Yeah, and then we went to their place, and we're up 3 with about 6-7 minutes to go in the game. Like, it's an incredible game, and we end up getting beat. That game, they got us down the stretch. We couldn't score enough. We kept not scoring, and then in the Big 12 championship game, it was just a high level game, like a high level game. It was an unbelievable game, and I was disappointed because I think we had 8 losses all year before the NCAA tournament. We had 8 losses going into the NCAA tournament, 7, 8, I don't remember. And 3 of them were to Kansas, and all 3 were games that you could have easily flipped, and we could have won. That team was a lot of fun to be around. That was a well-oiled machine, and it was an older team. It was a mature team. They understood the journey, and it was the leadership was awesome. They accepted coaching. And we won, so it made everything a whole lot of fun.
That KU game in Manhattan, that was an unbelievable day. Unfortunately, the loss in overtime, but I just remember the scene with College Game Day, Frank, and the energy and just how special that was. I mean, the buzz in the building, and that night with Dick Vitale, I think, on the call with Dan Schulman. It was a special night and one heck of a game, and I obviously remember, I think it was Jake that stripped Sharon Collins, and they tossed it at the dong. And but maybe could have had a foul there, right? So, yeah. Anyways, I digress. So, have you coached in a more wild game than the Xavier game? As we go through that season.
Wow. I mean, I'm old now. 41 years I've been on the sideline, so I've been a part of the good, the bad, and the ugly as far as games and teams and experiences. That game was back and forth. We popped because we had beaten them soundly earlier in the year, and we kind of popped the game open right away. And then they come back, and now we're down, and now it's back and forth, and now it's all right. We're going to win the game, and bam, we're going to overtime, and now we're getting ready to lose, and now boom, we're going another overtime, and that game was exhausting. I'm gonna hit rewind on you here and make you think, because these some of the decisions we make as coaches. Like, everyone knows the decisions that we make that impact winning and losing, because we make them in the middle of a game in front of the world to see. But then we also make decisions where no one's paying attention that we got to live with. So that game, because it went to double overtime, ended like at 1:00 in the morning, and now we go back to the hotel. And we're immediately meeting with the team about the next opponent, which was going to be Butler. So about 2:30 in the morning or something like that, we finally send the players to bed. Well, the NCAA gave us an 11:30 a.m. practice slot. So now we go practice, and that team had laid it on the line, like unbelievable. Like what that team did, how they practiced every day, how they played every game. I don't remember us having a game that year where I went home after the game and I was disappointed in our effort. So I said, you know what? I'm not practicing these guys. We're going to watch film. We're going to go on the court. We're going to shoot some balls. We're not going to tape. We're going to walk through stuff, and I'm going to let these guys rest. Well, if you remember, to the first half of the Butler game, we were like in mud. We were in slow motion. Everything we did was like a step slow. I've always regretted that I did, because that team was wired to practice and compete. I've always regretted that I didn't do that I didn't make them practice and compete even for 30, 45 minutes. I should have. It's what they did. It's who they were, and instead that we were sluggish. And I always felt I had a lot to do with that reason.
Frank, I would have actually thought you made the right call, though, because I remember, so I covered the game and I was there, and I remember that Friday after the game reading some, I don't know if they were sports scientists or something, they were tweeting back then about playing in the altitude and the impact of playing that double overtime game and the recovery timeline to have to turn around and then play on that Saturday. And so actually you hit on the question I was going to ask, because I was wondering, in the ensuing 24 hours, if you got a sense that, I don't know if my guy's legs are going to be there for the Butler game after, seeing him put up shots and seeing how that went down.
Yeah, and then the other part, then the NCAA determined that our Butler game was the first game out of the chute. We're on the West Coast. And because they wanted the Kentucky, West Virginia, and the more attractive time slot later in the day. So they put us out, first game out. And so we're on the West Coast with all the things you're speaking about, and now we're the first game out of the chute. Rather than Kentucky and all them play the early game, I think it was Kentucky, West Virginia.
Yeah, it was.
The Hugs goes to the Final Four. And instead of them being the first game out, we were the first game out, being on the West Coast. Which all that went into my decision to not practice the guys. And here's another tidbit from that Butler game. 2 minutes into the game, Denny Clemente got Charlie Horst guarding a ball screen. Not on purpose, just part of the game. He finished that game. If we had won, he probably doesn't play in the Final Four. That's how bad his thigh bruise was. Like the day after the game, his thigh, like he had a big knot on his thigh, and it was all black and blue. So even knowing him, he would have figured out a way to get on the court. But even if we had won, I don't know if he could have played the game in the semifinal.
I remember him being hobbled by that as that game went on, and I remember him hitting that corner three to put us up by one. And I that's when I thought, all right, the guys got this. But then, I mean, look, that Butler team, as you know, Frank, they were tough. They had a couple pros on that team, and Gordon Hayward, and then was it Norred?
Donald Norred, Shelvin Mack,
yeah.
Matt Howard was their center. They were really good, and but and I don't know so then he makes a three, and they come down, and Gordon Hayward scores. We made a mistake, and Gordon Hayward, that's why he's a pro, punished us on the mistake. So he goes 3-point play. So we go from up one to down two, and we come down, and we ran that play that we had run all year for Jacob, where against Xavier, he kept making those threes, and we ran it, and he came clean, and he let that thing go. And it was, I'm looking at it, it's dead on. I'm saying that thing's in, and we're taking the lead again. And it went in and popped out. I was like, damn. And then they came down and scored, and then we could never get it back to having the ball to a chance to win.
Yeah. No, man, I will never forget. Denny hits the shot, and it goes to the under four. It was the last media timeout. And it's like, man, after all this, like this team has taken the lead at the last media timeout. And unfortunately, just wasn't to be. But, man, I mean, what a team and what a season. I'll never forget those guys for sure. All right, well, I'm not sure if Frank Martin wears home field apparel or not, but he definitely should be. If he's not, Frank, use promo code 3MAW23 to get 15% off your first order. If you want to get some K-State gear, you want to get some UMass gear, South Carolina gear, like whatever you might need. They've got 100-plus teams there. They've got 50-plus K-State designs. You'll be looking great at Bill Snyder Family Stadium or Bramlage Coliseum if you go get to homefieldapparel.com. It is the most popular college gear around, all over the place. Go look on Twitter. You will see people wearing home field apparel left and right. And again, promo code 3MAW23 for 15% off your first order. Go get there. Go get your home field apparel and continue to support the Cats via them and look good while doing it. We're back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Now, the next year, you dealt with kind of the opposite sort of thing in terms of expectations, because that was like preseason top 5. I've got the Sports Illustrated right behind me with Jake on the cover.
I went bald. I went bald because of that team. That team right here. is the reason I'm bald today.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say, I mean, that was a ride, man. I mean, you have the preseason expectations, all the drama that was, I mean, Wally, Freddie Espria, Dillard's, like all the stuff that happened that season. And then, with like halfway through the conference season, you're out of the tournament. And by the end of it, you're a 5 seed. Like, I mean, it was wild. Jacob that will not play in the NIT. I mean, there was that thing too. Like, how do you encapsulate what you remember about that season?
That it's exactly what in coaching you already know. The outside world felt that team was going to be better because we only lost Luis Colon and Denny Clemente. And everyone felt that you can slide Jake over to Denny's responsibilities, and losing Luis, who only averaged 3 points, 3 rebounds a game, would be easily replaced. That's the world of analytics that doesn't fit. That's fantasy sports. When you take a guy that averages 3 and you replace him with a guy that averages 14. That's fantasy sports. That's gambling, all that stuff. In the real world, we deal with people. Luis Colon was the policeman in our locker room. Like, he made sure everybody stayed where I wanted them to stay. And when you lose that from your locker room, now you open it up for people to own things in ways differently than maybe what I want. And that team had to find its personality. Jacob was great, unbelievable. Denny took a huge burden off his plate with the responsibilities Denny dealt with in games. Now, all of a sudden, all the attention can go straight to Jacob's plate. Now, Jacob had to deal with not just the media attention, but now the other team's attention. In the past, if they just focus on Jake, Denny would just control the game. So teams had to stay locked in on Denny, and then Jake had so much more space and freedom. Not from me, freedom from the opponent to find success. So that team had to find this journey. You brought up the Dillard's deal. That was unfortunate. Think about that. Like, and against the rules back then, so we all had to pay a penalty for it. But we had guys missing games because they got $200 worth of jeans from Kurt's girlfriend. They didn't steal. The girl who worked at the store said, "Come pay for this shirt, and I'm going to give you a pair of jeans for free. I got this." So what did they do? I would have done the same thing. They went to the store, but the girlfriend's the one doing it. I'm not here to cast any stones. It was wrong. They paid a penalty. Now we're running around offering people $1 million to come play. That's like, what are we doing? But times change. It's having guys miss games. It doesn't allow you to find consistency with who you're trying to become as a team. And but that team, this is where I'll say a lot about that team. Instead of falling apart at the seams like it could very easily have, because we went from, I think we're preseason number 3 in the country, if I'm not mistaken. And going from preseason number 3 in the country to a team that was 2-5 after 7 games in the Big 12, that I remember clear as day. Was able to figure out a way to deal with all that adversity and come closer together. And if not for a loose ball, broken floor 3, goes to the Sweet 16. But it's that team, as hard as it was to manage all that stuff that we had to manage that year, the resolve of those guys to stay the course, stay committed to one another, continue to fight for what I was asking. I think we won 7 in a row to close the season. I mean, going into Texas and beating Texas, and that team showed a lot of character, a lot of heart, and I was real proud of those guys.
Frank, I was in Boulder covering the game at Colorado on that Saturday before the KU game, and Rodney hit that 3 with, you had a second on the inbounds play, he hits it, they count it, they go to the monitor, they wave it off, devastating loss. And at that point, I was like, gosh, I got KU on Monday, tight turn, you got to get back home. How does this team mentally recover? And then you guys destroy KU 84-68. Jake was fantastic, obviously, on that big Monday game. KU was number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that team, like after that Colorado game, like would they have the capacity to bounce back in the way they did against the KU game just 48 hours later?
I hope I'm not wrong for saying this story because I'm not trying to demean anybody, but it's something that moment, as coaches, we get too much credit for drawing up a ball play. And again, it's how we manage people that matters. It's not the X's and O's, and it's not the numbers on the computer. It's how can we manage the individuals, the people on your team. Earlier in the year, Wally Judge had quit the team. And he quit the team after we lost at KU. And Wally was just in a tough space. And he had decided he needed to walk away from basketball. I shouldn't say quit the team. He needed to walk away from basketball. That's a better wording of the moment. So we used to all make fun of Wally because he played with knee pads. I don't know if you remember, Wally always had these knee pads on. We're like, what the hell are you wearing? You never dive on a ball. What are you wearing knee pads for? We used to joke about that all the time. So we lost at Boulder. And by the way, it was a night game. So we didn't leave Boulder till late at night. Now we travel back east, get home at 3 a.m, and we've got Sunday and we've got Big Monday against the number 1 team in the country. Well, I walk out for practice with knee pads on. And those guys started laughing like they were in tears because they knew what I was doing. I was like, where's Wally? We need Wally. And that's why I said I hope I'm not demeaning the Wally as I say the story. But that was my way of breaking the ice to take the attention away from a tough loss. And here's this big old grizzly bear that everyone hates because he yells at everybody. And I'm just sitting there just trying to like make people laugh and relax, man. Like, yo, man, it's going to be okay. And then we had a really good practice. And then Jake put on an absolute show. I mean, that was unbelievable, the performance he put on against Kansas on Monday. And they never had a chance. I think we beat them 18, if I remember correctly. Never had a chance. And Jake was just, our team was unbelievable, but Jake was out of his mind.
You know, another thing I remember from that season was Brad played a big role in changing the offense, right? Tweaking the offense a little bit. And I'm sure you got a lot to say about Brad, especially looking at, where he's gone with his career now and the job that he's doing at Illinois. Like, what went into that? How did Brad get things changed around with the offense there to help you guys?
Yeah, Brad, so we get hired and I promote Brad, and Brad comes in and says, hey, I got this offense I used to run. We used to throw lobs for Blake Young. And he showed me the offense, and it's the old Johnny Orr wheel deal. I said, Brad, get out of here. I ain't doing that. Like, get out. Stop. So next year he'd come in. Hey, Frank, like I'm telling you, we can run the wheel. We'll throw lobs to. I'm like, Brad, stop. I'm not running that. That goes against everything I believe in basketball. So stop. Get away. I'm not listening to that. Every year he'd keep beating me up, and he wouldn't get his feelings hurt when I tell him I'm not paying attention to that garbage. Well, the one thing we struggled with, and I as a season, see, we all have opinions of what might work and not work in the preseason. Now the season starts, then you start learning about your team because you're playing in front of people and you're playing against strategy. And now you got different personalities embracing different responsibilities. How does everyone manage all that? And so now I'm saying, okay, I got to fix this. I got to fix that. And I told you guys earlier, Denny used to take a lot of responsibility off of Jake's plate. So it allowed Jake to play a certain way. Well, Jake, being a preseason first-team All-American, being so responsible for that incredible run the team the year before went, felt that he put more pressure on himself, like I got to score more, I got to do more, so he wouldn't pass the ball. He'd wanted, like, I got to go make this play because for us to win, I got to be good. And he had to learn how to trust. Like, we had a new guard next to him. Nick Russell, I believe, is who started next to him at guard. And Jake had to learn to trust Nick. And now Dominique Sutton wasn't around anymore as Rodney Magruder. Jake had to learn to trust Rodney. And in that journey, Jake got wrapped up. Like, the harder things got, like, the more I got to do. And I was like, Jake, the other way, you got to trust them. If you don't trust them, then everyone can zero in on you. And I realized the way I ran offense wasn't forcing Jake to pass the ball. So I walked in one day, I said, hey, Brad, you know that crappy offense you're always talking to me about? I said, can you teach it to our guys? We had 3 days of practice. We had just lost on Big Monday. I don't remember who against who. And then we're off on Tuesday, and then we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday playing Texas Tech on a Saturday. I said, Brad, if I give you 20 minutes, can you? And he says, he jumped out of his shoes. I mean, obviously you guys know Brad. Like, why? I was like, Brad, settle down. No, I got it. So for 3 straight days, I gave him 20 minutes to just teach the offense, and I became his assistant coach. And then we'd start practicing, and like he ran the offense, and I was running the defense, and it was the biggest difference because it forced Jake to pass, which made him then trust those players, and then we can move the defense. And if we couldn't get a basket, then it allowed Jake to come back around after moving the defense and then attack, which made it harder for teams to load up on him. And then his season took off. And then our season, we go on that 7-game winning streak. I think we scored against Texas Tech that day like 110 points or something like that. It was ridiculous. We put on a clinic offensively. And then, Brad, then I got to deal with Brad in my office every day telling me like how smart he is and how many variations he can run. And so it worked. So then I had to give him ownership and actually endorse him like within our team. Say, hey, Brad's doing an incredible job. Keep listening to him. Even though I felt like saying, like, tell him to shut up. I don't want to hear him anymore. I'm joking.
I know.
That's the great thing, man. Our staff, I just rehired Matt Figger here. And that having Brad, Matt, and Delonte with me every step of the way over there was so powerful, man. Our bond as a coaching staff was so strong that it permeated to our players, and that created a bond amongst them too.
I've often seen that photo, Frank, go around when Hugs was here and you were on the bench and Brad was on the bench and Delonte. What a staff that was and what you guys have accomplished. Hey, I wanted to jump back in the time machine a little bit, go back to your first year as the head coach, and just ask you, because I know that was a really young team, but you were supposed to have a guy in David Hoskins who averaged 14.5 points, 6 rebounds a game. The year before, had been a really good player at Kansas State for 2 seasons, and you lose him. I think it was a meniscus, something that wasn't supposed to be a long-term thing, and he just couldn't get, I can't remember the details of what transpired. He couldn't get the knee healthy, and you don't get him that whole season. How did that impact that team? What type of difference could a David Hoskins have made for a team that was so young?
Well, it's that everyone always viewed the statistical part, because David was a really good player for us. But David was an alpha male, as Bill Walker. And I would have had to manage the growth of that relationship early in the year, and can they both coexist? And in our team, because it's easy to plug in the stats, but can you get the personalities to get together? And that's I don't know. I don't know if I could have gotten those two guys. And it's not that they didn't get along; they were just 2 dominant personalities. And can they get along on a basketball court? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And as a coach, you got to manage that, and you got to help that relationship take place. And sometimes it never happens. That's that side of it. The other side of it is on a team that had 7 freshmen, and the 8th new player, and Denny Clemente, was a red shirt. I needed some experience, man, to help us get through some of the bumps of the road early in the season, and because. I don't care how talented Bill and Mike were. They were freshmen. I don't care how talented Jake was. He was a freshman. Freddie Brown, freshman. Guys that played. They Dominique Sutton, freshman. Mid-year freshman at that. So the roller coaster of emotions, forget day-to-day, play-to-play within a game. You had to have some older guys to help you kind of level the water there. That's where David would have been really, really good for us.
You mentioned earlier, so first of all, I heard you say on a podcast, I think you did with Fitz a few years ago, where you said you asked Hugs something about the media, and Hugs' advice to you was don't fight the media. Or he said he should have never fought the media early on in his career. And we talked earlier on the part one of this show how the K-State media kind of insulated for you and fought for you, but there were some criticisms when you were hired. I mean, I remember a column from Jason Whitlock in the KC Star that was ridiculous. And I mean, how did you react to that? And how did you manage through the media portion of that, the people that were doubters or skeptics and writing perhaps some unfair things and criticism there? Were you able to ignore that and put that to the side, or did you always have kind of a chip on your shoulder early in your career?
I'm just not thin-skinned. It bothered me because everyone else, when they get their first job, the media, for the most part, is excited about somebody new and let's see what he does. It doesn't mean they jump in your corner, but there's an excitement. All right, let's see what this guy does. I mean, even Joe Poznansky, who was the feel-good writer, destroyed me. Even when I was like, can one person just say, hey, man, let's be happy for this guy who's an old math teacher that's getting a chance to become a head coach? Like, not one person. And now when you hit rewind, the only national writer, Kansas City writer, Topeka, I can't remember the name of the one writer in Wichita.
Martin?
No, the older guy did.
I know you're talking about.
Bob Lutz.
Bob Lutz. He kind of did it a little bit, but the only one that ever came back and retracted his words and said, I was wrong, and then wrote a piece speaking about how wrong he was and what a fan of me he had become, was Whitlock. Everybody else just acted like they never said the stuff they said. He's the only one that owned it, and Lutz to a certain extent. Lutz did it more with me on the radio than he did with a piece that he wrote. I'm not, Cole, I'm a human being. I'd rather people say nice things about me than not. When I was younger, I've never really, you say whatever you want to say about me. It's never really bothered me. You say something about my family, my players, and you're going to find out about my forehead on your forehead. But I'm just not thin-skinned that way. And did it bother me? Yeah, it bothered me. I'm a human being. But I didn't. They had nothing to do with me getting hired. They had nothing to do with the journey I'd been in coaching. The people believed in me were John Weefalt, Bob Krause, Tim Weiser. Bob Huggins had endorsed me to them. There's a responsibility to that group of people for me to do my job, not fight people I know nothing about. And that's where I tried to keep my energy. And then I'm just telling you, K-Staters insulated me. They basically built a wall and said, this is our guy. Don't you guys mess with him. Let him do his job. And it was unbelievable. It was so powerful. And that's how I got through that moment. But if K-Staters hadn't have created that they just old-fashioned circle the wagons. If they hadn't circled the wagons to insulate me, to allow me to work and let me know, like, Frank, go coach basketball. You're our guy. We got all this nonsense. I don't know if I would have been able to turn the corner the way that I was able to professionally and the way our teams did.
Well, I mean, it was obviously a great marriage, and the K-State fans loved you, and it was a wonderful 5 years and tough on everybody when it had to end. I mean, you take us through like what that process is like when the 11-12 season ends. I mean, you guys make the tournament again. You had a couple of top 5 road wins that year with a team that had lost all the firepower from the Jacob Pullen-led team in 10-11. I mean, it was another great coaching job. But what was going through all that? What went into everything that was happening then when you did decide to leave for South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, I was starting to get to a different place in life. We had children now, my wife and I, being away from our families for, the distance, was hard. Her mom, was battling cancer that whole year. leading into the day I decided to leave. And I started thinking about the responsibility as a man because I saw the stress I was creating in Anya. And I said this publicly back then, and everyone called, I don't mean to curse on your show, but everyone called bullshit on it. And it wasn't. It was a big, big part of the family part of me jumping to a decision was I felt an obligation to be able to get my wife closer to her family and the family closer to grandchildren for all the reasons. And I'd never thought about that because my mom had always been healthy and her mom had been healthy, and I didn't have to worry about those things. And K-Staters are so good to us. Heck, some of our kids, like adopted grandparents, they're still like fly out to spend time with our families and take care of our kids, even though our kids are grown now. But all that was going on in my head. There'd been a change in leadership, which everyone documented, like John Curry and I did not get along. That was not truthful. We were going through adjusting to each other, which is what happens every time there's a change in leadership. It has nothing to do with people getting along. If you go to every organization, anytime there's a new CEO, usually your vice presidents change. And the ones that stick, there's a growing process that because everyone has to adjust to the new voice, new direction. And so, you know, and then the thing that, which is the only thing, and I guess it's got a negative connotation and there's no way for me to dance around it, was the whole Jamar Samuels situation. I just told you earlier, you call me whatever, you can make my life complicated, I'm okay. I'll handle that, and people will never know that something bothers me. When I feel somebody that I'm responsible for is not done properly, that one irks me, and I struggle with that. And I spoke about this back then, and I understand, man. I'm older now. Administrators have a responsibility to protect the university and programs. I get it. I don't feel Jamar did anything wrong. I didn't back then, and I still don't, whatever number of years removed we are. And so when you put all those factors together, I was vulnerable to listen, not to leave, to listen. And Eddie Fogler, who's a dear friend, who was really close with Tim Weiser, still is really close with Tim Weiser. Big reason Bob Huggins got to K-State was Eddie Fogler. Big reason Tim Weiser trusted in me was Eddie Fogler. And Eddie Fogler was leading the search for South Carolina. And Eddie and Eric Hyman, the AD at South Carolina at the time, they were college teammates at North Carolina back in the day. And Eddie, I was in a place where I was vulnerable with my ears, so that means I was allowing information in. And Eddie and Eric did an incredible job of selling me. And in that moment, my family was on board, and I made a decision. And, good decision, bad decision. It's a decision, man. We're human beings. We make decisions in life, and we move forward. K-State continued to be great. John Curry built that practice facility, which for years everyone said, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. He came in and got it done. K-State, like that football stadium. When I came in for Coach Snyder's daughter's wedding, and I saw that football stadium, I was like, holy cow, wow, that thing's beautiful. The upgrades that John got done there, where K-State's at now as an athletic department compared to where it was at the first day I got there in 2006. I can't remember what year it was, in the spring of 2006, I want to say. It's the leadership of that university obviously did a lot of good things. Coach Weber, the hardest thing I've ever done was telling those players that I was leaving. That thing was really, really hard to do. And then I told those guys, Rodney and Jordan were going into their senior year. Jordan Enriquez and Rodney Magruder. And I told those guys, I told all of them, I said, man, stay together. You guys deserve to go make a run and go win this thing. Stay together. And then obviously Coach Weber and his staff did an incredible job of getting those guys to trusting their voice, and they went out and won the Big 12. So it's and I was a miserable, losing every game we played, coach, on the other side of the country. And no, I don't say miserable in a bad way. I was dealing with losing, and I couldn't pay attention to K-State because it would have put my emotions in the wrong place. I had to act like K-State didn't exist that first year so I can be at peace with the job I was doing. Now I'll share this with you. And you were talking about K-State and my relationship with the fans. So, it's at K-State, if somebody didn't dive after a loose ball or got out of the way of a charge or didn't rotate on defense, I'd stomp my foot and I'd holler, and the arena would get up and love it. I get to South Carolina, and somebody wouldn't do those things, and I'd stomp my foot and holler, and people would cringe like, "Oh, why is he yelling?" And so culturally, it was something I had to learn as I went through it at the beginning of my time in South Carolina, and where at K-State, I'm not saying that my actions were all perfect, but people kind of celebrated when I was upset because somebody hadn't not score a point or whatever, not done what what our fans were accustomed to watching our teams do. Whenever somebody wouldn't do it and I held someone accountable, our fans loved it. And so it's that's an interesting little nugget there about learning in life as you live in different parts of the country.
I'm interested in you bringing up Bill Snyder there and coming back for the wedding, which is very cool. How tight were you with Coach Snyder? Like, what can you share about your relationship with him?
I'm unbelievable. We still communicate. Coaches, think about this. Think about being a young, first-time head coach, and we're running practices. Coach Snyder was retired, and as you guys know, covering K-State your whole lives, Coach Snyder doesn't do real well without something to do. So I'd be running practice, and him and Tex Winter would be in the stands. Tex Winter, Coach Snyder, and Ernie Barrett be in the stands watching practice. And I'd be running practice saying, I got to do my job. I got these three guys who are all Hall of Famers, looking at me every day. I can't screw this up. Now, coaches, I got to South Carolina and we're struggling, and I called Coach and I said, Coach, when you got to K-State, you guys weren't very good. How'd you turn it? Because I can't. And he started laughing, and he said, Frank, what I would do is I'd bring my GAs with me, and we'd have a team meeting, and I'd go player by player, and I say, hey, John, we're getting ready to go practice here in 30 minutes. What do you want to get better at today? And you'd say, well, Coach, I want to work on my footwork. They'd write it down. So then every player, go out there, go practice. And now, Coach, as you know, walk around practice with a little voice recorder, and everyone's practicing, and he's talking into the voice recorder as to what everybody was doing. And then practice would end, and he'd come back. All right, let's go back to the meeting room. Hey, John, get the GA. What did John say he wanted to get better at? Well, John said he wanted to get better at footwork. So then he'd play whatever you were in the drill on footwork, how you went about it, what he recorded. Well, John in the footwork drill was actually a non-participant. He stood on the side and didn't engage, whatever. So he'd play that for the player, and then he'd say, John, I thought you said you wanted to get better at footwork. So you had no out for getting out of the work. And I said, Coach, are you kidding me? He goes, Frank, I did that every single day. He said, the best part is, I think he said only five people transferred out. And those are the guys that flipped it and grew into changing that program around. And that attention to detail. And I remember I was trying to fight it by stomping and yelling and all that stuff. And in reality, man, it's work. It's getting people to hold them accountable to work, which is what changes it. And he was a great resource for me then, continues to be a resource for me. And the fact that I get to call him a friend makes me a lucky human being.
I remember you telling me, Frank, when you were trying to decide if you were going to leave K-State, he was somebody that you talked to as well and used as a resource there. Hey, I do have to ask you, have you you would have went up against Jerome Tang when he was an assistant at Baylor for several years. How well do you know Coach Tang, and what are some of your impressions of
his spirit? I mean, you guys are living it. You know, he's got this joyful spirit about everything that he does. That's infectious, and Scott Drew's a lot like that, and I've never, obviously I've never coached against Jerome as a head coach, so I assume when you coach against Baylor that what they're doing what Scott wants them to do, but I also know Scott's he delegates a lot, and he's very inclusive with making sure that everyone's voices are heard in the direction of their team, even though he owns final say for everything. And but I think Jerome, what he's done there is phenomenal. I envision him continuing to elevate K-State to a place where I've always felt it belongs, which is in the top third of the Big 12 and competing for a Big 12 championship, which when you can put yourself in that category, makes you good enough to compete for a national championship. That's because of the league and the competition that you're dealing with every day. I've tried to watch some. I'd be lying to you if I sit here and tell you I watch K-State play all the time. Tried to watch some. I'm usually busy watching our opponents at that time of year, but I'll peek as often as I can. K-State's a dear place to me and my family. I peek as often as I can. By the way, if I can't watch, all I got to do is call Underwood, and Underwood has talked to everyone over there, and he's watched every minute, and he can tell me everything that's right and wrong. So if you ever want to know what's happening at K-State, get Underwood on your podcast. You'll know more about K-State than you guys. At least he tells you he does. But
well, maybe that's not. We had Henry Walker on, which still feels weird to me not calling Bill. And then we got you on. Maybe we'll have to go to Brad next, right?
No, I say that jokingly. He played there. He's got an unbelievable pride being a K-Stater. I learned that before I ever went to work at K-State.
Yeah.
I understood what K-State meant to him just talking with him. And little did I know we're going to end up working at K-State together. No, but it's I think Jerome's going to continue to do great things there. I'm rooting for him like heck, man. He brings. I'll tell you what's been awesome. You don't win close games by mistake. That's really hard to do, and they win almost every close game they're in, and that has a lot to do with his direction, his voice, his positivity. Has a lot to do with that, and so I'm not surprised by their success and. Like everyone, I do this for a living, man. This is complicated. Winning is really hard. And I'm optimistic that he'll continue to win and K-State will continue to be proud of their program.
We'll get you out of here in just a minute because you've been more than generous with your time today, Frank. But speaking of Brad Underwood, you said you had a funny story for us from that Big 12 championship game.
Oh, yeah. So, Brad always has all these great, like you're in the middle of the game, he's got these great opinions. So we're in a 1-point game against Kansas, and Rodney Magruder didn't play much that year. And all you got to do, ask Rodney. He couldn't guard me. He was so bad defensively. And we're in a dogfight. And, like we do in the postseason, we shorten the bench a little bit, and you let starters play a little bit more. And Brad's in my ear. Dominique's tired. That's like maybe 6 minutes ago in the game. It's a 1-point game. And no, about 8 minutes, I can't remember. I know we had just come out of a media, so it's under the 8. So he's in my ear, like, Frank, Dominique, just to get him to shut up. I said, Rodney, get Dominique. I put Rodney in. Morningstar immediately goes, bang three, because Rodney screws up defensively. So now I call timeout because now we're down 7. I got to get Rodney the heck out of the game. I call timeout. I turn around and I just absolutely rip Brad's ass. And I'm like, You got any other bright ideas, Brad? And he turns to right. Fig to this day says the story. Like we're in the huddle, and he turns to me and goes, run 44. 44 is a play for Curtis Kelly. He never missed a beat. He went from like his opinion about Dominique being tired, screwing us in back-to-back play. It wasn't like 3 minutes. It was like boom, boom. To me ripping him an ass, and immediately had an opinion. Run 44. Like run 44. Oh my God. And that's Brad, man. He's awesome. That's why he's such a successful head coach. Again, he's not thin-skinned. He understands, man, this is hard. And it's we all and I'll share this with you guys. Is there a profession that more people that don't do it have opinions on how to do it more than coaching? I don't hear people sit around and argue over what the CEO of IBM or whatever has to do. I don't hear people sit down and say, oh, that guy performed that knee surgery. He shouldn't have cut the knee on that side. He should have cut. And they're bankers that are talking about this. Yet, the business we do, every surgeon, every banker, every person has an opinion on how we should do our jobs, which if as a head coach, if you struggle with that one, you're not going to succeed. If you're okay because you're not thin-skinned because we all play sports at one time of our life, you understand, and it doesn't, you don't make your decisions to make those people happy. You got to be at peace with your profession, and Brad's really good with that. So, how lucky, man. Matt Figger becomes, when he gets a head job, he becomes coach of the year. Brad's been coach of the year. David Kiefer, who worked with us at K-State, became the head coach of Southeastern Louisiana. He was coach of the year in their league. I've been so fortunate, man. The people I've had around me that I've learned from, and they fight their tails off to help me and help the players on our team find success.
Well, I'm always curious about this, Frank. Before we let you go, what are the places you missed the most in Manhattan, or where were your spots to hang out when you were in Manhattan?
Oh, wow. Now you've put me on the spot. Now you get ready to really, really make me look bad. My wife and I used to love going to dinner. I think it moved. It used to be on that strip mall on the kind of west side of town, and then he moved it. Really nice restaurant.
Olives? Was it Olives?
Right? He moved it to downtown, if I remember correctly. I never went to it downtown. I went out there. A guy that was married to a girl from Miami that lived across the street from me when I first moved to Kansas opened up the spot I used to go to all the time. He had a little Cuban menu, and it was over in the same area where Four Olives was at. There was a Thai restaurant, and then he opened it right next door. He's closed it. They left the area. What's the restaurant downtown? One of the great recruiting stories of all time. I got to share this one with you. What's a real nice restaurant downtown?
Harry's.
Oh yeah. So we get hired, and Coach Huggins loved this guy, Jason Bennett, that played for a dear friend of us in Rex Morgan. So we get hired, and we right away call JB. JB, you're coming on a visit to K-State, boom, boom, whatever. The whole visit was an adventure. I'm not going to bore you with that one. But, so I called JB, and he had just visited Auburn the week before, and it come down to K-State Auburn. And I called JB. I said, JB, so what do you like about Auburn? Now, think about this now. Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville is on the Atlantic Ocean, okay? You go visit Auburn, Alabama, and you ask a guy, what do you like most about the visit? And he says, the crab legs. I was like, what? The crab legs. They had the most incredible crab legs. I'm like, damn. So we hang up. So I go to Hugs. I'm like, Hugs, the guy says he loved crab legs. Like, we're in Manhattan, Kansas. Like, where are we going for crab legs? We've been on the job for a month. We don't know anybody. So we go to Bob. Hugs calls Bob Covello and Kurt McGuffin. It says, yo, we're bringing the big guy in tomorrow. Like, where do we get crab legs? They're like, man, I don't know where we can get crab legs. So Kurt calls the owner of Harry's and says, we got to cook crab legs for this recruit. So the owner says, we don't sell crab legs. Kurt says, if I bring you some crab legs from Kroger, would you guys cook them for us? And they're like, yeah, I guess we can do that. So Kurt and Cavello went to Kroger, and they bought like those snow crab legs or whatever, they're frozen at Kroger. They bought like these huge claws, and they brought them to a restaurant. So now we get to the restaurant, and we're sitting at the table, and the waiter and the waitress, I mean, first time we're there, they come up to the table, and they're like, hey, coach so-and-so, coach so-and-so, whatever. Hey, good day. All right, big table, right in the middle of the restaurant. What would you have? I'll have the steak. How about you? Blah, blah, blah. So now they get to JB and said, you must be Jason Bennett, the recruit. He like looks up and says, how'd you know my name? And the waiter says, I got one better for you. I bet you want some crab legs. He was like, my God, how'd you know I like crab legs? True story. We're sitting at the table. I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing here? We got no chance of signing this guy. And they brought the crab legs out. And this guy destroyed the crab legs. And we got him to come to K-State because he thought that in Manhattan, Kansas, we have better crab legs than Auburn, Alabama. It was, I'm like, my God. But true story. That's one of the great many recruiting stories that's out there.
I got to tell you, Frank.
Hey, that visit, those 48 hours, it's story after story after story.
I'm sure. I thought you were going to go a different way with that at the end, that he was going to be looking at the menu and then he was just going to be like, I'll take a burger after you went to all that hassle.
No, the waiter already knew, because there's only one guy 7'2" in the whole city. Forget the restaurant.
Yeah.
And the waiter already knew that that's the recruit, and that, K-State, man, they know who's coming in. You know, you recruit a basketball player at K-State. I'll never forget my first year, we're recruiting Mario Little out of junior college. We brought him to a home football game, and we walked down the field, and the whole student section, as we're walking across the goal line, got up and started chanting, "We want Mario." I was like, holy cow, do these people know all this? And it's the beauty of coaching there, man. People love their teams, love their coaches, and they know. So they knew who JB was, and I'll never forget the look on his face when he said, "How do you know I like crab legs?" I'm like, wow.
Well, Frank, I can tell you that Coach Tang's probably learning that pretty quickly here, because when he takes recruits to like the chef for breakfast, within like 2 minutes, there's a post out there like, Coach Tang's at the chef. He's got X and X player, X and X recruit. It gets out there so quick.
Hey, the black bit. Now you got me thinking food in Manhattan. Like lunch at So Long. Go eat lunch with Underwood and Fig, and you get the black bean raspberry dip.
Mm-hmm.
And Brad, here, this is great. Like, so you go, this is like 2 times a week. You go sit down, you order it, and Underwood eats more salt than any human being I've ever seen. So as soon as you sit down, he'd take the top off the salt shaker, salt all over the chips, and then he'd take the first chip, and Brad's a double dipper. So he'd get the first chip, dip, bite, take another scoop, and Fig would sit, this 2 times a week, Fig would sit there and be like, "Hey, Brad, I don't care for salt. Now I'm not going to eat because you just dipped the same chip in there twice. This is every single time." And I'm sitting there like, can we just get 2 orders? It's So Long. And then the Chuck Norris at the chef. That's the biggest breakfast burrito I've ever seen in my life. The size of that thing, you can feed 2 cows that Garth Gardner raises in Western Kansas with the size of that burrito. So it's a great time, man. You got me thinking now. Great people, great times, and great in the stories that make us all continue to go.
Man, yeah, that just got some good shout outs there at the end. I like that a lot. Frank, is there, you want to promote your podcast or anything on the way out here, since you've been so gracious with your time?
Yeah, I mean, it's this new world that we're in with being able to share information, and I don't want to say real information, asserting that the information that the media puts out is fake. That's not what I'm saying. It's just direct access that, like, you guys can have with K-Staters. That it's allowed me to promote our program at UMass, to completely connect with our fan base, because the bottom line is the local media and the state media doesn't cover us the way, because it's a pro state. Everything is about the Celtics, the Bruins, and I get it. So I can sit around and pout and complain, or I can utilize these opportunities that we have now to introduce our program to our fans in a more direct, personal way. So we started a podcast I'd love for K-Staters to watch. It's Just Being Frank. It's you guys know me, man. I can be accused of a lot of things, but dishonest is not one. And it's just the thought of taking advantage of who I am and my willingness to express what I believe in, and to advertise our program to our fans and anyone else that wants to listen. So anyone that wants to hear it, that's the title of it. You can find it. You can find all the episodes. We try to interview people who have been a part of my journey and part of basketball in the A10 and at UMass. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I told someone the other day, I'm trying to slide into home one more time. It's I've never got, every time I've gotten to third base, I've had to go from first to second to third. I never just kind of hit a triple. I've had to get to third base, and then I got to figure out a way to just knock that catcher over so I can get to the plate. And I'm trying to do that one more time. And can I? Can't I? I don't know. But I'm in the fourth quarter right now of my career, and I'm still good. My health is good. My energy's good. I love what I do, and so I'm hoping that I can make one more run here and dive into home plate, and maybe they can say safe this time instead of out. And if they do that, or if I'm out, if I just get a chance to slide into home plate, I'll be excited.
Hey, I wouldn't put any doubt past you, Frank. I mean, I remember watching UMass back in the 90s when I was a kid, and the Marcus Camby teams, and getting to the Final Four, and I would love to see you bring that passion back to UMass, and you got them on the right track. I mean, I know you finished fourth out of 15 teams in the A10 last year in just year two, most wins since 2006-07 in the conference for UMass. So, and obviously you took South Carolina to new heights that they've never been before with the Final Four, and you took K-State to its first tournament win in 20 years, and then a first Elite Eight in 22 years, and restored the passion within that fan base, and everybody takes a great pride. Everything, like John said earlier, we trace back all of our great memories with K-State basketball. We didn't know what it would be like with K-State hoops until Hugs came in and you took over as well. We didn't know if they could win, because we grew up just watching losing basketball, and there was a lot of apathy. I always wondered what it'd be like, and so we look very fondly on those years. And
hey, were you guys there Hugs' year for Midnight Madness? Were you guys there?
Yeah, was there as a fan.
Yeah.
Yo, that is the most incredible thing. We're practicing, and we can hear like the doors, like boom, 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 and Cavello and Kurt McGuffin, because they were always around. They're like, yo, those are the students. They're, and Hug said, let them in. Yeah, but let them in. And we're in practice, and they open those doors. People were body surfing down the bleachers to get to the first row. I'm looking at all this saying, oh, my God, these people are out of their minds. Like, how lucky are we that we're here? And it took off from that day forward. I mean, it was the fan support. One time, we I can't remember what day of the week. It was either a Saturday or a Sunday. We had a non-conference game, and I can't help myself sometimes. I'm trying to be funny, but at the same time make a point. And I said something along the lines of, like, there must have been a bowling tournament in town tonight, in this afternoon in town. And, so I get a call. I'm like, come on, man, you can't do that. I was like, yeah, man, I'm being honest. Like, why aren't they? I'm pretty sure it's my second year. Like, why aren't our fans coming? Like, I've been a part of 2 years where this thing sold out every game. And our fans, they didn't take it personal. Talk about not being thin-skinned. The next game we played sold out, and then away we went, and great time.
What was Hug's line back, John? Do you remember? He said something about like Oral Roberts, or Frank, do you remember?
He challenged the fans that first year. I remember that. Yeah.
He had a line that he would give on radio when they didn't show up early on. Coach Tang's challenged the fans when they don't show up sometimes. So
we're all in it together, man. Fans criticize us, and we're supposed to stand there and not take it personal and be excited about the next day. Sometimes we got to poke the fans back and let them know, like, yo, I'm one of you now. Like, I need you. Like, we're not fighting each other. I need you.
I've never taken it personal because that's just a compliment to the fans that they impact winning. The coach wants you there because he knows how much of a home field advantage you can create and how much of an advantage you give the team. So I never have had a problem with it. So, yeah.
It's every once in a while we all just need, because we pay attention to what, like, I don't care what some Yahoo in the middle of nowhere says, but what our fans say. You guys were around me. That's why I connected with K-State fans. I pay attention to what our fans say. Yep. I care about that. And so we pay attention to what our fans say. And when our fans are critical, it was my line. When our fans get back on the roads of Kansas to go back home, I want them to feel the way I feel. I want them to either be happy, sad, or pissed. One of the three. There's no other way. You're either sad because your team fought their tails off and lost. You're happy because you won. Or you're pissed because your team didn't play the right way. If the head coach and the fans are not connected in that department, you don't have a program, and that's what we fight to create.
Yeah, well, did a hell of a job of it at K-State, and we're certainly excited to see you doing what you're doing at UMass, and wish you nothing but the best of luck. I mean, I know I'm speaking for both of us saying this was a thrill to be able to do this. So, thank you so much, Frank, for doing this. Best of luck, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon, man. Don't be a stranger.
Appreciate it, guys. Absolutely. Let's get Jacob Poland's jersey up there. Let's get that one done. Let's get that one done.